Commander Zylak Vroot of the Galactic Alliance stood on the observation deck of the Harmonious Accord, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly in what his species considered extreme annoyance. The massive diplomatic vessel hung in orbit around Earth's moon, which now sported several large, distinctly non-lunar features that were, to put it mildly, on fire. "Would someone," Zylak said with forced calm, "please explain to me how we went from peaceful diplomatic summit to satellite partially ablaze in less than 14 galactic standard hours?" Lieutenant Grix, his tentacled communications officer, slithered nervously beside him. "Well, sir, it seems the humans took offense at Ambassador Qualo's speech." "Offense? Offense?" Zylak's dorsal spines flared involuntarily. What part of set fire to a celestial body falls under the diplomatic category of taking offense? "To be fair, sir," Grix said, "Ambassador Qualo did call their species adorably primitive yet remarkably tenacious, like bacteria that learn to wear clothes." Zylak's membrane-covered nostrils flared. "And that warranted pyrotechnics visible from 3 systems away?" The truth was, nobody in the Galactic Alliance had expected much from humans. When their crude radio signals were first detected, most species had voted to ignore them entirely. Earth was positioned in an unremarkable arm of an unremarkable galaxy, and its dominant species appeared to spend most of their time creating entertainment about improbable mating scenarios and arguing about colored lights that moved around on screens. But then the humans had done something unexpected. They'd built an antimatter engine, practically overnight. One day they were sending robots to their neighboring red planet. The next they were casually manipulating the fundamental building blocks of reality. "Sir," said Security Chief Draw, a burly 4-armed Paxian whose battle scars told stories that made even veteran officers wake up screaming. "I warned the Council. I specifically stated, do not underestimate the primates. But did anyone listen to me? No. They're so cute with their little wars and their funny hats," they all said. Zylak sighed heavily, the sound resembling a bagpipe being slowly crushed. The Council thought that inviting them to the peace conference would be a symbolic gesture, show the younger races that were inclusive. Nobody expected them to actually participate or set orbital bodies on fire, added Grix helpfully. "Yes, thank you, Lieutenant," Zylak said. "The question remains, how exactly did they manage it? Their technology shouldn't be capable of this level of whatever this is." The ship's sensors officer, a glowing cloud of sentient gas named Whisper, pulsed in agitation inside her containment suit. "Sir, analysis indicates they used our own defense grid. They somehow hacked into the automated laser array we installed around the conference zone for protection." Zylak stared. "They hacked our security system?" "The same security system designed by the collective superintelligence of the Arcturian Mind Hive?" "Yes, sir," Whisper's voice crackled through her translation module. "And they did it with what appears to be a modified gaming console and something called Red Bull." Zylak's exoskeleton creaked as he slumped into his command chair. "Right. Where are the human representatives now?" "Still in conference room 3, sir," Grix reported. "They've requested more of those burnt bean water stimulants and sugary looped cereal bits. Coffee and Fruit Loops," Drawl corrected with surprising precision. When everyone turned to look at him, he shrugged his upper pair of shoulders. "I've been studying their culture. Know thy enemy." "They're not our enemy," Zylak insisted, although the flaming patterns now visible on Luna suggested otherwise. "They're just enthusiastic. Get me their lead diplomat." "What was his name again?" "Dr. Brandon Maxwell, sir," Grix said. "He's their foremost expert in xenopolitics, though he only got his doctorate 3 years ago, since the field didn't exist before we made contact." The large communication screen flickered to life, revealing a human male with a disheveled appearance, dark circles under his eyes, and a manic grin that made Zylak instinctively check that his personal shield was activated. "Commander Vroot." The human exclaimed with alarming cheer. Just the alien I wanted to see. How are you enjoying our little demonstration? Demonstration? Zylak repeated slowly. What? You called defacing a celestial body a demonstration? Dr. Maxwell laughed, a sound that somehow conveyed both joy and the promise of unpredictable behavior. Oh, come on, we didn't deface anything. We're just expressing ourselves artistically. The patterns are actually a binary message of peace. And technically, we only ignited gases released from subsurface deposits. The fires will burn out in a few days. Why would you do this? Zylak asked, genuinely confused. Well, Maxwell scratched his head. After Ambassador Qualo's charming speech comparing us to well-dressed bacteria, we figured we needed to make a point about human ingenuity. Plus, honestly, we were bored. Do you know how long your diplomatic protocols take? We went through 17 coffee pots waiting for the Rigelian delegation to finish their traditional greeting dance. Zylak's 4 eyes blinked out of synchronization, a sign of extreme stress among his species. So you decided to pass the time by committing arson? On a moon? When you put it that way, it sounds negative, Maxwell pouted. We prefer to think of it as impromptu terraforming with artistic intent. Plus, seriously, no one was using that part of the moon anyway. We checked. Security Chief Drawl stepped forward, all 4 hands resting on various weapons. Human, your actions constitute a severe breach of protocol. The Council may view this as an act of aggression. Maxwell's expression suddenly shifted, the manic grin replaced by something sharper, more calculating. The change was so abrupt that even Drawl took a small step back. Let's talk about aggression, shall we? Maxwell said, his voice dropping to a tone that somehow made the temperature on the command deck seem to fall several degrees. 3 of your member species have been surveying Earth for centuries, inducting humans for study. The Zentari Mining Corporation has been illegally extracting resources from our asteroid belt. And let's not forget the accidental weapons test that vaporized one of our unmanned space stations last month. Zylak shot a panicked look at Drawl, who avoided eye contact. These were all classified incidents that humans shouldn't have known about. How did you? We're not as primitive as you think, Commander, Maxwell interrupted. We may be new to the galactic stage, but we learn fast. Very fast. The moon art. That's just to get your attention. We could have done much worse. The implied threat hung in the air like a blade. What do you want? Zylak finally asked. Maxwell's face brightened immediately, the dangerous edge vanishing so completely that Zylak wondered if he'd imagined it. His seat at the table. A real one. Not the symbolic one you gave us out of pity. We want access to the trade networks, technology exchange programs, and full voting rights in the Galactic Alliance. Zylak's mind raced. What the human was asking for was unprecedented. No species had ever been granted full status without at least a millennium of probationary membership. And yet... I'll have to consult with the Council, he said cautiously. Of course. Maxwell nodded enthusiastically. Take your time. We've got plenty more coffee, and I think Agent Parker found something called karaoke in your entertainment database. Did you know your species has some amazing vocal ranges? Before Zylak could respond to this puzzling statement, alarms blared across the command deck. Lieutenant Grix rushed to the sensor station. Sir, we're detecting multiple launches from Earth's surface, hundreds of small craft heading toward us. Weapons? Drawl demanded, already moving to battle stations. Negative, Whisper replied, her gaseous form pulsing rapidly as she analyzed the data. They appear to be civilian vessels, retrofitted with makeshift propulsion systems that shouldn't possibly work, but somehow do. On the screen, Dr. Maxwell looked slightly embarrassed. Ah, yes, about that. Word got out about the conference, and well, people got excited. What people? Zylak asked, dreading the answer. Just, regular folks. Scientists, engineers, college students, a few billionaires, some conspiracy theorists who've been preparing for this moment their whole lives. The usual mix. You're telling me, Zylak said slowly, that random humans are just flying to space? To attend a high-security diplomatic conference? Without authorization? Maxwell shrugged. Humans really don't like being left out of things, especially historic things. It's kind of our weak spot. Zylak felt a headache building in all three of his brains. How many? Grix checked the sensors. Current count is 879 craft, sir. And rising. They can't dock here. Zylak protested. We don't have the facilities, or the life support, or the bathrooms. Do you know how many different bathroom configurations we need for the 27 species already here? Maxwell nodded sympathetically. That's why they're bringing their own stuff. Look, the crafty ones are already setting up what they're calling Space Woodstock in lunar orbit. They've got inflatable habitats and everything. Sure enough, the sensors showed hundreds of makeshift space stations rapidly assembling in a colorful, chaotic cloud around the dignified diplomatic vessel. This is unprecedented, Drawl growled. No species has ever. Yeah, we get that a lot, Maxwell interrupted. Listen, you can try to stop them, but honestly, it would be easier to just roll with it. They brought snacks to share, some of them even baked cookies. Space cookies. Isn't that thoughtful? Zylak closed all four of his eyes, counted to 10 in the ancient meditation technique of his people, then opened them again. The situation remained unchanged. The moon was still on fire. Hundreds of unauthorized human craft were still approaching. And somewhere on his ship, if Maxwell was to be believed, alien diplomats were performing karaoke. Fine, he said finally, but they stay in their space Woodstock. And you, Dr. Maxwell, will personally ensure they don't cause any interstellar incidents. Absolutely. Maxwell agreed cheerfully. Though I should mention that Agent Parker found your weapons locker and is now showing the Arcturian ambassador how to do shots while juggling plasma grenades. Zylak made a strangled noise. Don't worry, Maxwell assured him. Parker was in the circus before joining intelligence services. He hardly ever drops things anymore. Before Zylak could respond, the ship's translation system picked up thousands of radio transmissions from the approaching human vessels. The messages ranged from formal greetings to bizarre demands for alien autographs to conspiracy theories about reptilian infiltrators. One particularly loud signal simply repeated, "We brought tacos for everyone." You see, Maxwell said with genuine pride, this is humanity at its finest. Faced with the unknown, we bring snacks and party supplies. Zylak stared at the human, finally understanding something fundamental about their species. They weren't just reckless or ingenious or frustrating. They were all of those things simultaneously, and more concerning still, they seemed to thrive on chaos. The Council believed that because your world is divided into nations often at odds with each other, you would be too disorganized to present a united front, Zylak admitted. Maxwell laughed. Oh, we're absolutely disorganized. But here's the thing about humans, Commander. We don't need to be united to be effective. We're like, what's a good analogy? He snapped his fingers. We're like a swarm of creative, contradictory bees. Individually, we might go in different directions, but collectively, we get things done. Sometimes accidentally, often spectacularly. As if to punctuate his point, new flames erupted on the lunar surface, this time forming what appeared to be a smiley face. That wasn't us, Maxwell said quickly. That's probably the teenagers. They said they were just bringing a science project, but clearly he trailed off, then shrugged. Kids these days, am I right? Zylak realized with a sinking feeling that the Galactic Alliance had made a terrible miscalculation. They had evaluated humans based on their technology, their divided politics, their short lifespans. What they had failed to account for was whatever quality allowed a species to go from mysterious signals detected to the moon is on fire, and people are having a party in space in less than a decade. Dr. Maxwell, Zylak said carefully, I believe it would be best if I arranged an emergency council session immediately, with your presence requested as the human representative. Maxwell's eyes lit up. Really? Full council? With the big telepathic jellyfish things from Andromeda and everything? Yes, Zylak confirmed, already dreading how this would go. I think the Alliance needs to reassess our approach to Earth. Fantastic. Maxwell clapped his hands together. Let me grab my notes and, oh wait, the karaoke. Should we finish the karaoke first? Ambassador Zylak from Betelgeuse was about to perform something called Bohemian Rhapsody, and she has 14 voice boxes, so it's going to be spectacular. Zylak stared at the screen, at the enthusiastic human and the lunar inferno behind him, and made a decision that would later be recorded in galactic history as either the most prescient or the most catastrophic diplomatic move ever made. Bring the karaoke, he said, and the tacos. We're going to need them. As the transmission ended, Zylak turned to his stunned crew. Contact all council members. Priority Alpha. And someone find out what tacos are and whether they're compatible with our biochemistry. Because if there was one thing now clear to Commander Zylak Vroot, it was this. The galaxy was not ready for humans, but ready or not, the humans had arrived. The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Alliance was designed to inspire awe. Soaring crystalline arches supported a dome that displayed the real-time movements of 1,000 star systems. The councilors' seats were arranged in concentric rings, each representing species that had achieved interstellar travel and proven themselves worthy of membership through millennia of careful observation. Never in its 14,000-year history had the chamber contained a buffet table. More salsa. Dr. Brandon Maxwell offered cheerfully to Supreme Elder Quizan of the Volari Collective, a being composed primarily of semi-sentient fungal networks. The Elder's translation unit hummed. This red substance causes a most interesting chemical reaction in our neural pathways. We will sample more. Several tendrils extended to accept the offered condiment. Commander Zylak Vroot watched in disbelief as the most powerful governing body in known space devolved into what the humans called a mixer. Across the sacred chamber, diplomats who normally communicated through formal channels were now gathered in small groups, sampling Earth foods and attempting to replicate human gestures. You've turned the emergency Grand Council into a cocktail party, Zylak accused Maxwell, who was now wearing a jacket with Earth, mostly harmless emblazoned across the back. Isn't it great? Maxwell beamed. You know what your problem is. Too much structure, not enough mingling. How can you govern the galaxy if you don't know what anyone likes to eat? Before Zylak could respond with one of the 17 regulations being violated, High Chancellor Xylos, the nominal leader of the Alliance, floated toward them. The ancient being resembled a translucent manta ray suspended in air, its body pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that constituted a language older than most species' existence. Commander Vroot, the Chancellor's thoughts projected directly into their minds. This gathering is unconventional. My sincere apologies, Chancellor, Zylak began, shooting a venomous glare at Maxwell. I take full responsibility for. It is marvelous, the Chancellor interrupted, mental voice tinged with something Zylak had never detected from the ancient being before, amusement. In 3,000 years attending council, I have never before been offered a nacho. Most stimulating. Maxwell grinned triumphantly at Zylak. See? The Chancellor gets it. Zylak's exoskeleton made an audible cracking sound as his posture stiffened further. With respect, Chancellor, we have serious matters to discuss. The humans have violated numerous protocols, hacked our security systems, defaced a neutral celestial body, and now hundreds of unauthorized craft are dancing, the Chancellor finished, mental voice thoughtful. They are dancing in space. My attendants inform me that several hundred human vessels are currently engaged in what they call a conga line around our diplomatic fleet. It's the first interstellar conga line in history, Maxwell said proudly. We're pretty sure we've set a record. Do you guys have some kind of galactic record book? Like a Guinness World Records but for space? The Chancellor's bioluminescent patterns shifted to a frequency indicating deep contemplation. We do not. Perhaps we should. This seems precisely the type of innovation humans excel at. Zylak fought the urge to bang his head against the nearest wall. Chancellor, with all due respect, the humans cannot be rewarded for this behavior. They've completely disregarded our most sacred. Sacred. A new voice boomed across the chamber. Ambassador Qualo, the 7-foot-tall reptilian diplomat, whose insult had triggered the lunar pyrotechnics, strode toward them. His scales were flushed an angry crimson, and the ceremonial bladder sacs beneath his chin were fully inflated in a display of aggression. You speak of sacred protocols, Commander? Do you know what these humans did after I addressed their species with the traditional greeting? The adorably primitive yet remarkably tenacious bacteria comment? Maxwell supplied helpfully. Yes, a compliment of the highest order in my culture. Bacteria are the foundation of all life. Tenacity is our most valued trait. Qualo's voice rose to near deafening levels. And in response, they hijacked our defense grid to ignite lunar gases in a pattern that, when viewed from my homeworld, forms our ancient symbol for four. Underwear, Maxwell finished with a straight face. We thought cultural exchange was important. Qualo's bladder sacs deflated slightly. It was seen by billions of my people. And now they'll never forget Earth, Maxwell pointed out. Mission accomplished. Plus, we sent along a recipe for guacamole in the transmission. Your biochemistry should find it delicious. Qualo stared at the human, his reptilian features unreadable. Then, to Zylak's astonishment, the ambassador's scales shifted from angry crimson to amused orange. You sent a culinary transmission alongside a celestial underwear symbol? We thought it was only polite, Maxwell said. Can't draw on somebody's moon without bringing snacks. A sound emerged from Qualo that Zylak had never heard before, a rhythmic hissing that translation software identified as laughter. In 14 generations of diplomatic service, no one has ever been so spectacularly offensive yet simultaneously generous. I find I cannot decide whether to declare war or adopt you as cultural siblings. Let's go with siblings, Maxwell suggested. Wars are messy. Family dinners are much more fun. The Chancellor's mental voice resonated through the chamber. Perhaps it is time to formally address the reason for this emergency session. The human question. The various conversations throughout the chamber quieted as diplomats returned to their assigned places. Even the humans who had somehow multiplied from Maxwell's original delegation of 5 to at least 30 scattered throughout the room settled down, though one continued to demonstrate a thumb war to a fascinated Arcturian ambassador. Dr. Maxwell, the Chancellor projected, you stand before this council as the representative of humanity, a species that has, in the span of less than a decade since first contact, managed to confound every prediction our analysts made regarding your development path. Maxwell straightened his posture, suddenly the professional diplomat rather than the impish provocateur. Chancellor, esteemed council members, we appreciate the opportunity to address you. While our methods may seem unorthodox, our intentions are sincere. Your methods, Councillor Vex of the Medusan Imperium spoke up, include broadcasting what you call reality television to 17 of our member worlds, causing mass confusion about human mating rituals. That's actually a misunderstanding we're eager to clear up, Maxwell said with a wince. Those shows don't represent actual human behavior. They're entertainment. You consider deception entertainment? Another counselor asked. Not deception, exaggeration, Maxwell clarified, like Ambassador Qualo's bladder sacs. They're naturally impressive, but he's intentionally inflating them right now for dramatic effect. It's a performance, not a lie. Swallow's bladder sacs immediately deflated in embarrassment. The Chancellor's patterns pulsed thoughtfully. You claim serious intent, human, yet your actions suggest otherwise. You have turned our moon into an art canvas, our council into a social gathering, and our defense grid into a light show. What are we to make of a species that treats matters of galactic importance with such frivolity? For the first time since Zylak had met him, Maxwell looked truly serious. He glanced at his fellow humans, received subtle nods, and stepped forward. Chancellor, members of the Council, Commander Vroot. We owe you an explanation, and perhaps an apology, though not for the reasons you might think. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Humanity has spent its entire existence alone in the cosmos. We searched the stars for centuries, hoping for companions, preparing for threats, but always alone. Then suddenly we weren't. The chamber was utterly silent as Maxwell continued. When we discovered we weren't just part of a galactic community, but that this community had been watching us, evaluating us, occasionally abducting us. He shot a pointed look at several uncomfortable-looking counselors. We reacted with a mixture of excitement and terror. Terror, Zylak questioned. You've shown nothing but reckless confidence since arriving. Maxwell's laugh held no humor. Commander, do you know what humans do when we're terrified? We joke, we party, we draw on moons, because the alternative is to face the crushing reality that we are technological infants surrounded by species who could exterminate us with a thought. A murmur ran through the council at this unexpected vulnerability. Our antics weren't just high spirits, Maxwell continued. They were a calculated demonstration. You all assumed we'd be easy to control because of our primitive technology. So we needed to show you that even with inferior tools, humans can be unpredictable. Yes, we hacked your unhackable defense grid. Yes, we retrofitted civilian vessels for space travel in days rather than years. Yes, we turned diplomatic protocols upside down. To what end? The Chancellor asked. To make you take us seriously, Maxwell said simply. Not as a threat, but as equals. As a species that won't be colonized, won't be experimented on, and won't be dismissed. We might not have your technology or your millennia of history, but we have something you seem to have lost along the way. And what is that? Counselor Vex demanded. Maxwell's expression softened. Adaptability, creativity, the willingness to try the ridiculous because sometimes the ridiculous works. When faced with the vastness of space, we didn't develop careful, standardized protocols over thousands of years. We didn't have that luxury. Instead, we threw everything at the wall to see what stuck. Sometimes it was elegant science. Sometimes it was duct tape and determination. Duct tape? Zylak questioned. A metaphor, Maxwell said, then paused. Actually, no, it's a literal adhesive strip. You'd be amazed what we've fixed with it, including some parts on our first Mars rover. The Chancellor's patterns shifted to a frequency indicating deep interest. You suggest that humanity's apparent chaos is, in fact, a form of strength? Exactly, Maxwell nodded eagerly. Your alliance is built on stability, predictability, careful advancement. That works brilliantly for established spacefaring civilizations. But the universe isn't always stable or predictable. Is it? There are threats out there even the Alliance fears. Problems your traditional approaches haven't solved. Several counselors shifted uncomfortably, and Zylak suddenly understood Maxwell's strategy. The Alliance had indeed been facing mounting challenges: the aggressive expansion of the Vorax swarm beyond the outer rim, the mysterious disappearance of entire star systems near the galactic core, the cascading failure of ancient transportation networks no one fully understood anymore. You're offering human unpredictability as a resource, Zylak realized aloud. Bingo. Maxwell pointed at him with finger guns, a gesture that made several diplomats flinch. Sorry, not a weapon, he clarified quickly. Just an expression of correctness. Yes, Commander. We're chaotic, but it's a chaos you might find useful. While your scientists spend decades seeking perfect solutions, we'll try 100 imperfect ones and stumble onto something that works. The chamber erupted in multiple conversations as counselors debated among themselves. The Chancellor's pattern cycled through frequencies too rapidly for translation, indicating intense processing. Finally, the ancient being addressed Maxwell directly. What do humans want from the Alliance in return for this chaotic innovation? Maxwell straightened. 3 things. First, full membership with equal voting rights. Second, a non-interference guarantee for Earth's continued self-governance. And third, he hesitated. Yes? The Chancellor prompted. A cultural exchange program. Massive in scale. We want to learn everything, your histories, sciences, arts, philosophies. And we want to share ours. Not just formal diplomats, but students, teachers, artists, chefs, engineers. Real people meeting real people, or real sentient gas clouds, or whatever. A ripple of surprise moved through the chamber. No species had ever requested such extensive integration without centuries of preparatory isolation periods. This would be unprecedented, the Chancellor stated. The potential for cultural contamination has already happened, Maxwell interrupted gently. The moment we learned we weren't alone, Earth culture changed forever. The question isn't whether cross-cultural exchange will occur, it's whether it happens in the shadows or in the open. Officially sanction it, and we can learn from each other, try to prevent it, and, well. He gestured vaguely toward the viewport, where the lunar surface still sported several burning patterns. The Chancellor was silent for several moments. Then, unexpectedly, a feeling of amusement radiated from the ancient being. In all my centuries, the Chancellor projected, no species has ever negotiated by first setting a moon on fire. Maxwell shrugged. We like to make memorable first impressions. Indeed. The Chancellor's pattern shifted to a formal diplomatic configuration. The Council will need to deliberate on your requests. However, I find myself intrigued by the possibilities. Perhaps there is wisdom in bringing new perspectives to age-old challenges. Maxwell bowed slightly. Thank you, Chancellor. We'll await your decision. In the meantime, he gestured to where several humans were setting up what appeared to be a small stage. We've prepared a cultural demonstration of our own. A human tradition called Open Mic Night. We invite any interested council members to participate. As the diplomatic gathering transformed yet again this time into something resembling what humans called a talent show, Zylak found himself standing beside Maxwell at the chamber's edge. This is not how interstellar diplomacy is conducted, Zylak said, but there was less conviction in his voice than before. Maybe it should be, Maxwell replied. You know what happens when different cultures meet in human history? After the initial conflicts, they start sharing food, music, stories. That's how real connections form, not through treaties, but through understanding each other's jokes. And if the Council rejects your proposals? Zylak asked. Maxwell shrugged, his expression suddenly unreadable. Then we go back to Earth and continue developing our technology at the pace that alarmed you enough to invite us here in the first place. Only now we know what's possible. We know what's out there. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. We're quick learners, Commander. Before Zylak could respond, a cheer went up from the gathered diplomats. On the makeshift stage, Ambassador Qualo was attempting to perform a human dance called the Macarena while 2 Arcturian jellyfish provided harmonic accompaniment. See? Maxwell's genuine grin returned. Progress already. 3 days later, Zylak stood on the observation deck of the Harmonious Accord, watching as the last of the human vessels departed lunar orbit. Against all protocol and precedent, the Council had approved Maxwell's proposals with conditions and safeguards, but approved nonetheless. I still don't understand how they did it, Lieutenant Grix said, tentacles waving in confusion. They should have been censured, not rewarded. Security Chief Drawl, who had spent most of the conference in surprisingly deep conversation with human military representatives, grunted. You're thinking like a diplomat, not a strategist. The Alliance needs humanity's chaos as much as humanity needs our stability. The Council was correct, Zylak agreed reluctantly. For too long, we've approached every problem the same way. Perhaps some controlled unpredictability will serve us well against the challenges we face. Besides, Whisper added, her gaseous form swirling with amusement, did you try those taco things? Worth setting a moon on fire for, if you ask me. Zylak allowed himself a small gesture of agreement. There is one thing that still bothers me, though. Dr. Maxwell implied that all their antics were strategic, a calculated way to demonstrate humanity's unpredictability as an asset. But much of what they did seemed genuinely impulsive. Drawl made a sound that might have been a laugh. That's the most brilliant part, Commander. I don't think even they know how much was planned versus spontaneous. That's what makes humans so effective and so terrifying. Half calculation, half improvisation, and impossible to tell where one ends and the other begins. On the view screen, the departing human ships suddenly rearranged themselves, forming a giant smiley face against the blackness of space before jumping to faster-than-light travel in a spectacular, completely unnecessary flash of colors. Chancellor Xylos was right about one thing, Zylak murmured. The galaxy will never be the same. Grix's translation unit beeped as it processed an incoming message. Sir, the humans have left us something. They're calling it a parting gift. The view screen shifted to show the lunar surface, where the fires had finally burned out. In their place, visible only from orbit and etched permanently into the regolith, was an intricate design. It took Zylak a moment to recognize it as a stylized image of Earth and the Alliance insignia, joined by a handshake. Beneath it, in lettering large enough to be seen from Earth's surface with a decent telescope, were words that summed up humanity's approach to galactic diplomacy. Thanks for the party. Let's do this again sometime. P.S. We fixed your defense grid. You're welcome. Notify the Council, Zylak said with what might have been the faintest trace of a smile. Tell them it's begun. What's begun, sir? Grix asked. Zylak gazed at the message carved into the moon's surface, a monument to audacity that would remain visible for millions of years. The human era, he said simply. May the universe help us all.